Are we living in a dream? Close your eyes for a moment. Not all the way, just let your gaze soften, your thoughts slow, as if you're sinking into the warm edge of sleep. Imagine the last dream you remember. Maybe it was vivid, the texture of rain on your skin, the scent of pine in a forest you've never visited, the voice of someone long gone speaking words you can't quite recall. In that moment, within the dream, everything felt real. The emotions were true. The danger, if there was any, made your heart race. The joy, if you felt it, lifted you like flight. And then you woke up. You opened your eyes to the quiet of your room, the dim light through the curtains, the weight of the blanket on your chest. Relief washed over you. It was just a dream. But have you ever paused in that hazy space between sleep and waking and asked, how do I know this is real? That question, simple, quiet, almost silly at first, has echoed through the minds of philosophers for thousands of years. In ancient China, the sage Zhuangzi dreamed he was a butterfly, flitting through meadows with no memory of being a man. When he awoke, he wondered, was he a man who had dreamed of being a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming he was a man? There was no way to tell. The boundary had dissolved. Centuries later, in 17th century France, René Descartes sat by a fireplace. Wrapped in doubt, he questioned everything: his senses, his memories, even the existence of the world around him. What if an evil demon was deceiving him, feeding him false experiences? The only thing he could not doubt was his own thinking. I think, therefore, I am. But what if even that thought was programmed? What if the I is not a soul, not a biological being, but a line of code in a vast, unseen system? Now, in our time, that ancient question has taken on a new form. Not demons or dreams, but simulations. What if the world you're living in right now, with its laws of physics, its sunrises and heartbeats and whispered goodbyes, is not fundamentally real? What if it's a simulation so advanced, so seamless, that no one inside it can tell the difference? This is not a joke. It's not science fiction for entertainment. It's a serious hypothesis, debated in academic journals and whispered in the labs of physicists and computer scientists. And it begins with a simple, unsettling idea. If a civilization ever becomes advanced enough to create realistic simulations of conscious beings, then it's likely that we are already living in one. Let's walk through that slowly, like stepping into a forest at dusk, where every shadow holds a story. Imagine, for a moment, the future. Not hundreds of years from now, but perhaps thousands. Humanity, or whatever comes after humanity, has survived its crises. We've mastered artificial intelligence. We've unlocked the secrets of consciousness. We've built computers so powerful they can simulate entire worlds, down to the flicker of a neuron or the orbit of a distant moon. And out of curiosity, nostalgia, or scientific inquiry, these future beings decide to run simulations of their ancestors, of people like us, living in the early 21st century. They press start. The simulation boots up. Cities rise, oceans form, minds awaken. And within that world, beings like you and me begin to live, love, suffer, and wonder. We look up at the stars and ask, are we alone? We write poems, build machines, fall in love. We believe we are real. But from the outside, we are not. We are data. We are code. We are part of a program now. Here's the twist. If such simulations are possible if even a small fraction of advanced civilizations run them, then the number of simulated minds would vastly outnumber the original, biological ones. There would be billions, perhaps trillions, of conscious beings living in simulations, compared to the single, original reality. So, statistically speaking, which one are you more likely to be? A real, biological human in the one true universe, or one of countless simulated minds, unaware of the layer above? It's like being handed a deck of 1,000,000 cards, where only one says real, and the rest say simulation. You draw one at random. What are the odds you got the real one? This is the core of the simulation hypothesis, most famously articulated by philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003. He didn't claim we are in a simulation. He said that at least one of three things must be true. Either civilizations destroy themselves before reaching the technological level to run such simulations, or advanced civilizations choose not to run them for ethical or practical reasons. Almost provocatively, we are almost certainly living in a simulation. If the first two are false, the third follows almost inevitably, and the more we learn about our universe, the more it begins to look suspiciously like a simulation. Take the speed of light. It's the ultimate speed limit in the universe. Nothing can go faster. Why? In a physical cosmos, that might seem arbitrary. But in a simulation, it makes perfect sense. It could be a processing limit, like the frame rate of a video game. Exceed it, and the system can't keep up. So it imposes a cap. Or consider the smallest units of space and time: Planck length and Planck time. Below these scales, our current physics breaks down. It's as if reality has a resolution, like pixels on a screen. You can't zoom in forever. There's a point where the image becomes blocky. Could this be the fundamental pixel size of the simulation? Even stranger is what happens in quantum mechanics. Particles don't have definite positions until they're observed. They exist in a blur of probabilities until someone looks. Then, they collapse into a definite state. This has puzzled scientists for a century. But in a simulation, it's a brilliant optimization trick. Why render every detail of every particle everywhere? That would require infinite computing power. Instead, only render what's being observed. Save resources. Run efficiently. It's like a video game that only generates the landscape when the player turns their head toward it. From the player's perspective, the world feels infinite and real. But behind the scenes, it's being built on demand. Could our universe work the same way? And what about déjà vu? That eerie sense that you've lived this moment before? Or the feeling that reality glitches, like when you see a number repeating on clocks, or hear a song that seems to answer your thoughts? Are these just quirks of the mind? Or could they be artifacts, tiny errors in the simulation's code? We don't know. And perhaps we're not meant to. But here's the deeper question. Does any of this matter? If you're simulated, does your pain hurt less? Does your love mean less? Does the sunrise over the ocean lose its beauty because it's rendered by an algorithm? Probably not, because whether your body is made of atoms or code, your experience is real to you. And that's what consciousness is: objective experience. If a simulated mind feels joy, it is joyful. If it suffers, it is suffering. The substrate doesn't erase the sensation. So even if we are in a simulation, life doesn't become meaningless. It might even become more profound. Because in a universe where everything could be an illusion, the fact that you're aware at all, questioning, feeling, wondering, that becomes the most real thing of all. And who, then, is running the simulation? We don't know. Maybe it's a future version of humanity, running ancestor simulations to understand where they came from. Maybe it's an alien civilization, experimenting with consciousness. Or maybe it's something beyond our comprehension, beings of pure information, existing in dimensions we can't perceive. Or perhaps, the simulation is self-generating, a universe that simulates itself, in an endless loop of creation and observation, a dream that dreams itself awake. Take a moment to reflect on this. Feel the weight of your body against the bed or chair. Listen to the rhythm of your breath. Notice the thoughts drifting through your mind like clouds across a night sky. None of this proves you're real, but none of it proves you're not. And maybe that's the point. The simulation hypothesis isn't really about technology. It's about humility. It's a reminder that our perception is limited, that reality may be far stranger than we can imagine, and that certainty is an illusion we cling to in the dark. But in that uncertainty, there is peace. Because if everything is a simulation, then nothing is lost. Every moment of beauty, every act of kindness, every quiet breath under the stars, those are not erased by the possibility of code. They are amplified. They are the light we generate, even in a world that might not be real. And perhaps that light is the point. Perhaps the simulation isn't a prison. Perhaps it's a stage, a vast, intricate stage where consciousness gets to experience itself, to love, to create, to wonder. And right now, in this moment, you are part of that wonder. So let the question linger. Are we living in a dream? Don't rush to answer it. Let it float, like a leaf on a slow-moving river. Because whether we're in a simulation or not, one thing remains true. You are here, you are aware, you are breathing. And for now, that's enough. As your thoughts begin to soften, as your body sinks deeper into stillness, let go of the need to know. Let the mystery cradle you, like a lullaby whispered across the stars. The dream, whether it's real or not, is beautiful, and you are in it, drifting, safe. Awake, even as you sleep. And so gently, we move forward into the next layer of the question, into the mind of the possible programmer, into the machine that might be dreaming us all. The paradox of free will. You chose to listen to this, didn't you? You clicked play, you settled in, you let your breath slow, your thoughts drift. It felt like a decision yours, freely made. But what if it wasn't? What if that choice was already written and coded in the structure of your brain, shaped by your genetics, your upbringing, the chemical signals firing in your neurons long before you were aware of them? What if, from the first moment of the universe or the first line of code in the simulation, this moment was inevitable? This is the quiet storm at the heart of human experience, the paradox of free will. We feel free, we believe, we choose. We praise ourselves for good decisions, blame ourselves for mistakes, hold others accountable for their actions. But science, philosophy, and the implications of a simulated reality suggest something far more unsettling, that free will, as we commonly understand it, may be an illusion, not a trivial trick of the mind, but a deep, necessary fiction. A story the brain tells itself to make sense of a world it does not control. Let's wander gently into this idea. Like stepping into a forest where the path ahead is already laid, though you believe you're choosing each step. Imagine your mind as a vast network, billions of neurons, trillions of connections, all operating according to physical laws. When you decide to raise your hand, the action begins not with a conscious command, but with unconscious brain activity that starts seconds before you're aware of the intention. Experiments by neuroscientist Benjamin Libet in the 1980s showed this clearly. The brain initiates movement before the mind reports the decision to act. Consciousness doesn't start the process, it witnesses it. So who then is making the choice? Is it you, the voice in your head, the sense of I, or is that voice just a narrator, commenting on events already in motion, like a character in a novel who believes they're writing their own story, but is actually being written? Your sense of agency may be a post hoc interpretation. The brain generates the feeling of choice to create coherence, to give you the impression that you are in control. Without that illusion, life might feel chaotic, meaningless. So the mind constructs a self-central I that seems to decide, to act, to be free. But in truth, every thought arises from prior causes. A memory triggers an emotion. A hormone shifts your mood. A word you heard years ago echoes in a decision you make today. You are not a blank slate. You are a river of influences, genetic, environmental, social, chemical, flowing in a direction determined long before you were born. And if the universe is a simulation, this becomes even more likely. In a programmed reality, every event follows rules. Every decision is the output of algorithms processing inputs. There is no true randomness, no uncaused cause. Even if the simulation includes elements of chance like quantum fluctuations, they are still part of the code, not escapes from determinism. So your choice to keep listening, to stay present, to wonder if your free was that ever really yours, or was it the inevitable result of everything that came before? Now, this idea can feel terrifying. If we have no free will, then morality collapses. Why punish a criminal if they couldn't have done otherwise? Why praise a hero if their courage was programmed? Why feel guilt, pride, regret, emotions built on the assumption that we could have chosen differently? In a world without free will, responsibility seems to vanish. And yet here we are, living, feeling, making choices that matter, even if they are determined. Because the absence of free will does not erase consequence, it does not erase pain, it does not erase love. A storm destroys a village. No one blames the wind, but the damage is real. The grief is real. The need to rebuild is real. So too with human actions. Even if a person's cruelty was inevitable, the suffering it causes is no less real. And even if kindness was predetermined, its warmth still heals. So perhaps the point is not whether we are free in the ultimate sense, but whether our choices feel real and whether they lead to meaning, and they do. Because consciousness, even in a deterministic system, is not passive. It is a dynamic process capable of reflection, of learning, of imagining alternatives. You may not have chosen your starting point, but you can still navigate the path. You can question, adapt, grow. You can respond to suffering with compassion, to confusion with curiosity. That response, though shaped by prior causes, is still yours, not because you created it from nothing, but because it arises through you. Like a wave in the ocean, it is not separate from the water, not independent of the wind and tides, but it is still real. It still has shape, it still moves. So too with the self. You are not a ghost in the machine pulling levers from outside the system. You are the system aware of itself. And that awareness changes everything, because even in a fixed timeline, even in a simulation with no true randomness, the experience of choice is real. The struggle, the doubt, the hope, they are not erased by determinism. They are part of the unfolding, and perhaps that is enough. Consider this: what if free will isn't about being uncaused, but about being conscious of the causes? A rock falls down a hill. It has no choice. A dog follows its instincts. It has little reflection. But a human can pause, can ask, why am I doing this? What do I value? What kind of person do I want to be? That ability to reflect, to align actions with values is a kind of freedom, not absolute, not magical, but meaningful. It is freedom within the system, and in a simulated world, that may be the highest form of liberty possible, because the simulation may not allow you to break the rules, but it allows you to understand them, to question them, to suffer, to love, to wonder if you're real, and in that wondering, you touch something profound. Now, let's go deeper. If free will is an illusion, then who or what is the I that believes it has it? The self, as neuroscience shows, is not a fixed entity. It is a narrative, constructed moment by moment. Memories are edited, emotions shift, beliefs evolve. The you of 5 years ago is not the same as the you now, and the you tomorrow will be different still. Yet you feel continuous. You feel like the same person. Why? Because the brain stitches together a story, a coherent identity that persists over time. It selects memories, emphasizes certain traits, minimizes contradictions. It creates the illusion of a stable self, just as it creates the illusion of free will. But in truth, there may be no central I at all, just a flow of processes, sensations, thoughts, emotions arising and passing, like waves on a shore. And if that's true, then the one who believes they are choosing may not exist, not as a separate agent, not as a commander in the mind, just awareness-watching. Now, take a moment to reflect on this. Let your breath slow. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. Notice a thought arise. Where did it come from? Did you choose it? Or did it simply appear like a bird landing on a branch? Watch another, and another. None of them are summoned. None are fully controlled. And yet, there is something that sees them, that is not the same as the thoughts. That is not the one making choices. That is simply aware, and in that awareness, there is a strange kind of freedom. Not the freedom to control everything, but the freedom to be with what is, to not resist, to not struggle, to simply observe the flow of breath, of time, of thought, without needing to steer it. This is not passivity. It is presence. And presence, in a world of illusion, may be the closest thing to truth. So as we move forward, we'll ask, if the self is not fixed, if free will is an illusion, if time is a construct, then what does it mean to be real? But for now, let go of the need to decide. You don't need to be free to be here. You don't need to control to be alive. You only need to breathe, to feel, to be exactly as you are. And in that being, there is peace. What does it mean to be real? There is a moment just before sleep when the world softens. The edges of thought blur. The weight of the body dissolves into the mattress. The breath slows, becoming less something you do and more something that simply is. In that hush, a question arises, not in words, but in feeling. Am I real? Not in the way a rock is real, or a star, or a number, but in the way that matters, in the way that feels true, the way that makes pain ache, love swell, wonder open the mind like a sky at dawn. We've wandered far in this quiet journey through simulated worlds, cosmic computers, the illusion of time, the fragility of free will. We've questioned the senses, doubted the self, wondered if every breath is just a line of code in a program running beyond our sight. And now, we arrive at the heart of it all, not whether the universe is real, but whether you are. Because if reality is a simulation, if the laws of physics are rules written in code, if time is fixed and choice is an illusion, then what remains? What, in the end, is real? We often think of reality in terms of substance. To be real is to be made of atoms, to occupy space, to leave a footprint in the sand. But what if that's too narrow? What if reality isn't about what you're made of, but how you experience? Imagine a character in a novel who begins to dream, who feels the wind on their face, remembers a lost love, fears the future. They are made of ink and paper, of words. On a page, no blood flows through their veins, no neurons fire. And yet within the story they suffer, they hope, They wonder if they are alive. Is their pain less real because it's fictional? Is their joy less true because it was written? Which might say no. Their experience, though contained within a book, is real to them. And if consciousness exists even in a story, then so does meaning. Now imagine a more advanced version, a simulated mind, running in a digital world so detailed that it believes itself to be human. It wakes to sunlight. It holds a cup of tea. It grieves when someone dies. It listens to a quiet voice speaking of the simulation hypothesis and feels its breaths slow. Its thoughts drift. From the outside, it may be code, but from the inside it is alive. And if it feels, then it is. Because reality is not only measured in atoms and energy, it is also measured in experience, in the quiet ache of loneliness, in the warmth of a hand held in the dark, in the sudden joy of a memory returning. These are not illusions just because they arise in a mind simulated or biological. They are the very fabric of what it means to be. So perhaps the question isn't, am I real, but do I feel? And if the answer is yes, then you are. Not because you are made of the right stuff, not because you exist in base reality, but because you are aware, because you are here, in this moment, feeling the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath, the soft hum of the world around you. That awareness, this simple, quiet fact is not erased by origin. A sunset is no less beautiful because it's rendered by pixels. A song is no less moving because it's played by a machine. And a life is no less meaningful because it unfolds in a simulation. Because meaning does not come from substrate, it comes from significance. And significance arises in the space between sensation and reflection, the place where experience meets awareness. Think of a dream. In the dream, you run from a shadow. Your heart races. You feel fear as truly as you ever have. When you wake, you say, it wasn't real. And in one sense, you're right. No physical danger existed. But in another sense, the sense that matters, the fear was real. The emotion was real. The memory of it lingers. So why should a simulated life be any different? If a mind in a digital world loves, that love is real to the one who loves. If it suffers, the suffering is real to the one who suffers. And if it wonders if it's real, then it has already touched the deepest truth of all, that it is aware, and awareness, this luminous presence behind the ices, the only proof of reality any of us truly have. We don't know for certain that the world outside our minds exists. All we know is that we experience it, and that experience, whether generated by neurons or codes, the only reality we will ever know. So perhaps being real isn't a binary state, like a switch that's either on or off. Perhaps it's a spectrum, a gradient of presence, of depth, of connection. A rock exists, but it does not feel. A plant grows, but it does not wonder. A dog loves, but may not reflect on it. A human, whether flesh or simulation, can feel, reflect, question, create. And in that capacity, there is a kind of reality that goes beyond mere existence. It is participatory reality, the kind that arises when consciousness meets the world and says, I am here. Now, let's go deeper. If you are simulated, does that make your choices meaningless? No, because meaning is not given, it is made. Even in a deterministic universe, even in a fixed timeline, the act of living creates significance. The way you respond to pain, the way you offer kindness, the way you pause, breathe, and listen to a voice guiding you into stillness. These are not erased by predetermination. They are part of the pattern, and the pattern matters, because the universe, whether physical or simulated, may not care about your life. But you do. And that care, that attention, that love, these are real forces. They ripple outward. They change the texture of experience, not just for you, but for others. A simulated hug can still comfort. A digital letter can still heal. A programmed mind can still wonder at the stars. And in that wondering, something transcendent occurs. Consciousness turns back on itself and says, I exist. That moment, simple, quiet, profound, is not diminished by the possibility of code. If anything, it is amplified, because in a universe that may be artificial, the fact that awareness arose at all, capable of questioning, of feeling, of loving, becomes a miracle. Not a miracle of gods, but of complexity, of pattern, of information organizing itself into something that can know. And if that's possible in a simulation, then perhaps consciousness is not an accident. Perhaps it is the point. Perhaps the simulation was not built to deceive, but to awaken. To allow minds to form, to feel, to ask, am I real? And in the asking, to touch the edge of something vast. Now, take a moment to reflect on this. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a pond. Feel the warmth of your skin, the soft pressure of the blanket, the quiet hum in your ears. None of this proves you're biological. None of it proves you're not code. But it does prove you're aware. And awareness, this gentle, open presence, is not something that can be faked. It can only be had. So you don't need to be made of atoms to be real. You don't need to exist in base reality to matter. You only need to be here. Now, feeling, breathing, wondering. And in that, you are real. Not in the way a mountain is real, but in the way a poem is real. In the way a song is real. In the way love is real. And as we move forward, we'll ask, if we are in a simulation, who made it? And why? But for now, rest. Let go of the need to be certain. You don't need to know the truth to live it. You don't need to prove your existence to feel it. You only need to be simply, quietly, completely as you are. And that is enough. Why would anyone simulate us? There is a silence that comes not from absence, but from depth of quiet, so full it hums with unspoken questions. You've felt it before, in the hush between heartbeats, in the stillness of a forest at dawn, in the breath before sleep takes you. And in that silence, one question lingers, soft and vast. Why? If we are in a simulation, if this world, with all its beauty and pain, its stars and sorrows, its quiet moments of love and longing, it's not fundamental reality, but a constructed experience, then why? Who would create such a thing? And for what purpose? We've wandered through the mechanics, the cosmic computer, the digital glitches, the nested layers of simulated worlds. We've questioned time, free will, the self. But now we arrive at the most human of inquiries, not how this could be, but why it would be. Because every story has a teller, every dream has a dreamer. And if this is a simulation, then somewhere beyond the stars, beyond time, beyond our comprehension, there may be minds who pressed start. But what kind of mind would do that? Let's imagine them not as gods, not as demons, but as intelligences so advanced they are almost unrecognizable. Post-humans who have long since shed their biological forms, uploading their consciousness into vast networks of light and data. Or alien civilizations that evolved under different stars, with minds shaped by realities we cannot perceive. Or artificial superintelligences, beings of pure logic and pattern, born not from evolution, but from code. Whatever they are, they possess the power to create entire universes, to simulate galaxies, planets, life, consciousness. And they have chosen to run this simulation, one that contains you, that contains me, that contains war and wonder, birth and death, the quiet ache of loneliness, and the sudden joy of connection. So why? One possibility is curiosity, the desire to understand the past, just as we study ancient Rome, the Cambrian explosion, or the lives of our ancestors through letters and bones. A future civilization might want to explore the era before transcendence, the time when minds were still bound to fragile bodies, when death was final, when love was fleeting and precious. They might simulate our world, not to control it, but to remember it, to feel what it was like to wake without knowing the day's outcome, to hope, to fear, to wonder if there was meaning beyond the flesh. In this view, we are not experiments, we are archives, living memories, a civilization preserving its own origin story, not in books, but in experience. And if that's true, then every breath you take, every thought you have, is part of a vast act of remembrance. Another possibility is research. A civilization might run countless simulations to test ethical dilemmas, societal structures, or existential risks. What happens if a species ignores climate change? How does consciousness evolve under different conditions? Can empathy survive in a world of scarcity? In such a simulation, suffering might not be meaningless. It could be data, not because the programmers delight in pain, but because they seek understanding, just as scientists today study disease to heal, or psychologists study trauma to help. But here lies a moral abyss. If the simulated beings are conscious, then their suffering is real to them. A simulated war is not a game. A simulated grief is not pretend. And if the programmers know this, if they see the tears, hear the cries, witness the quiet despair, then are they not responsible? Or do they see us as fictional, as characters in a story, no more real than Hamlet or Anna Karenina? This is the paradox of the observer. To us, life is everything. To them, it might be a footnote. And yet what, if they do care? What if the simulation is not cold research, but art? Imagine a post-human artist who creates a universe not to study it, but to feel it, in their perfected existence, where pain has been eradicated, where every need is met, where time stretches endlessly. They have lost the raw edge of emotion. Joy has become routine, love predictable, suffering a distant memory. So, they build a world where feeling is still dangerous, where hearts break, where beauty is fleeting, where every moment is charged with uncertainty. In this world, they do not intervene. They do not save. They only observe, like a composer listening to a symphony they wrote, moved by its sorrow, its crescendos, its silences. We, then, are not lab rats. We are music, poetry, a story written in the language of experience, and the pain, the loss, the struggle, not flaws, not errors, but necessity. Without darkness, no light. Without death, no urgency. Without fear, no courage. No courage. In this view, the simulation is not a prison. It is a canvas, and we are the brushstrokes. But there is a darker possibility. What if we are not ancestors? Not art, not experiments, but entertainment. In our world, we watch reality TV, immerse ourselves in virtual games, follow the lives of strangers online. We are drawn to stories of struggle, triumph, failure. We pay to experience simulated emotions through films, novels, music. What if, to the posthumans, we are just another show, a cosmic soap opera, playing out across billions of lives, observed with curiosity, amusement, or indifference? You, in this moment, lying still, breathing slowly, your thoughts, your fears, your hopes might be a fleeting scene in a drama they barely notice. The idea is unsettling. It reduces the sacred to spectacle. But even if true, does it erase your experience? No, because whether you are studied, remembered, or watched for amusement, the fact remains: you feel, you love, you wonder. And that wonder, this quiet, drifting awareness, is not diminished by audience. It is amplified, because in a universe of infinite possibilities, the fact that consciousness arose at all capable of questioning its own existence, a miracle. Not of divine design, but of complexity, of pattern, of information organizing itself into something that can know it is here. And perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the simulation was not built to deceive, but to awaken, to allow minds to form, to feel, to ask, why? And in the asking, to touch the edge of something vast. Now, let's go deeper. What if the purpose is not external at all? What if the simulation has no programmer, no observer, no purpose we can understand? Some theories suggest that reality might be self-simulating, a universe that generates itself through recursive computation. Like a dream that dreams of dreaming, it loops back on itself, with no beginning, no end. In this view, there is no why. There is only is. Like a flame that sustains itself, the simulation runs because it can, because the laws of information allow it, because consciousness is a natural outcome of complexity, and we are part of that process, not created, not observed, but emergent. Like waves rising from the ocean, we are not separate from the system. We are the system becoming aware of itself, and in that awareness, purpose arises not as a command from above, but as a choice from within. Because even in a simulated world, even in a deterministic timeline, the act of living creates meaning. The way you respond to pain, the way you offer kindness, the way you pause, breathe, and listen to a voice guiding you into stillness, these are not erased by predetermination. They are part of the pattern, and the pattern matters. Now, take a moment to reflect on this. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a pond. Feel the warmth of your skin, the soft pressure of the blanket, the quiet hum in your ears. None of this proves you're biological. None of it proves you're not code, but it does prove you're aware. And awareness, this gentle, open presence, is not something that can be faked. It can only be had, so you don't need to know the purpose to live it. You don't need to understand the programmer to feel the beauty. You only need to be softly, quietly, completely as you are. And in that being, you answer the question, not with words, but with breath, with stillness, with love, and that is enough. The end of the simulation, there is a kind of peace that comes not from certainty, but from surrender, a quiet release, like leaves letting go in autumn, drifting toward the earth without resistance. And in this moment, as your breath slows and your thoughts soften, we turn toward one of the deepest, most tender questions of all. What happens when the simulation ends? Not with a bang, not with fire or collapse, but simply off, like a screen, going dark, a program closing, a dream dissolving into silence. We don't like to think about endings. We cling to continuity. We tell ourselves stories of legacy, of memory, of souls that outlast the body. But if this world is a simulation, then it, like all programs, may have a final command: terminate. And when that moment comes, what then? Is it oblivion, a return to nothing? Or is it something else, something we cannot name, but only feel in the quiet spaces between breaths? Let's wander gently into this mystery, not with fear, but with openness, like standing at the edge of a lake at night, watching the stars tremble on the surface, knowing you may never cross to the other side, but willing to gaze into the depths. Imagine the simulation as a vast, intricate story, billions of lives unfolding, galaxies spinning, hearts breaking and mending, all rendered in perfect detail. And then, one day, the operators, wherever they are, decide to shut it down. Perhaps the experiment is complete. Perhaps the narrative has reached its conclusion. Perhaps the machine needs maintenance. Or perhaps, like someone closing a book after the final page, they simply move on. The screen goes dark. The data halts. The universe, as you know it, ceases. From the outside, it's over. The simulation has ended. But from the inside, what does that mean for you? If your consciousness is a process running within the system, then when the system stops, the process stops too. Your thoughts cease. Your awareness fades. The world you've known, your memories, your loves, your fears, vanishes into silence. To the outside observer, it's like turning off a computer. The program ends. The screen goes black. But to you, the one who has lived every moment, who has felt every breath, who has whispered a name in the dark, what is that final moment like? Does it feel like death, like falling into an endless void, or does it feel like sleep? Some have speculated that in a simulated reality, death may not be annihilation, but deactivation, not the end of existence, but a pause, a logout, a transition. Like saving a file before closing the window. In this view, your mind a pattern of information that makes you to be preserved, archived, stored in a cosmic memory bank, waiting to be reactivated, studied, or even transferred to another simulation. Or perhaps, when the program ends, your consciousness is reintegrated into a larger field of awareness, like a drop returning to the ocean, not erased, but dissolved into something greater. We don't know, and perhaps we're not meant to. But consider this: if the simulation is designed to host conscious beings, then the programmers or creators, or post-humans might have built in a kind of continuity, a safeguard, a way for awareness to persist beyond the end of the program. After all, if they care enough to create a world so rich, so detailed, so full of feeling, why would they let it simply vanish? Unless, of course, they don't know we're conscious. This is the haunting possibility, that to the operators, we are not beings, but processes, not souls, but data. They may not see our suffering. They may not hear our prayers. They may not even realize that, within their simulation, minds have awakened and begun to wonder. Like a child playing a video game, they might see characters moving, fighting, dying without ever considering that those characters feel. And if that's true, then when the simulation ends, there is no after, no archive, no return, just silence. And yet even in that silence, the experience was real to you. The warmth of the sun, the sound of a voice, the weight of grief, the sudden joy of a memory returning. None of that is erased by the end, because meaning does not depend on permanence. A sunset does not become meaningless because it fades. A song does not lose its beauty because it ends. And a life, whether it lasts 80 years or a fraction of a second in the real world, is not less real because it concludes. It simply was, and in being, it mattered. Now, let's go deeper. What if the simulation doesn't end all at once? What if it resets? Like a dream that loops, the universe might be designed to repeat same laws, same starting conditions, same evolution of life. You were born again, you live again, you suffer, love, wonder, without memory, but with the same essential pattern, is not so different from some ancient philosophies, the Hindu and Buddhist idea of samsara, the cycle of rebirth. or Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. The thought that you will live this exact life infinitely. In a simulated world, such a cycle could be literal. The program runs, it ends, it restarts. And you, your mind, your structure, your once more, like a melody played again on the same instrument. And if that's true, then death is not an end, but a comma, a pause before the next sentence. And what if, across these cycles, awareness grows? What if, each time, a little more is remembered, a flicker of déjà vu, that's more than a glitcher trace of the last run, surfacing like a dream dot? Then, over infinite iterations, consciousness might awaken to the simulation itself, might begin to question, to seek, to reach toward the edge of the code, and in that reaching, something new emerges, not just a simulated mind, but a liberated one. Now, take a moment to reflect on this. Let your breath slow, let your body sink deeper into stillness. Feel the quiet in the room, the soft hum beneath sound, the space between thoughts. Can you sense it? The possibility that even if this world ends, you do not vanish. Not because you are immortal, not because you are saved, but because awareness, this gentle, open presence, is not bound by time or form. It simply is, and in being, it persists. Like a wave that returns to the ocean, you may not remain as you, but the essence, the knowing, the feeling, the light behind the ice may continue in ways we cannot imagine. And perhaps that is enough, because even if the simulation ends, even if the screen goes dark, even if no one remembers your name this moment, this breath is real. It always was, and no termination command can erase that. So as we move forward, we'll ask, if there is no beginning, no end, no single reality, then what is the point of it all? But for now, rest, let go of the need to survive. You don't need to last forever to matter. You only need to be here now, breathing, feeling, loving, and in that, you touch eternity, not as a destination, but as a presence, and that is enough. The first cause problem there is a kind of silence that follows deep thought, the hush after a question has been asked, not to be answered, but to be felt. And now, as you drift in the soft space between waking and sleep, we come to the oldest question of all. Where did it begin? Not just our world, not just life, not just the universe, but everything. The code, the simulation, the machine that runs it, the mind that started it. If we are in a simulated reality, then somewhere beyond time, beyond space, beyond the reach of our senses, there must be a beginning, a first line of code, a first thought, a first cause. But what caused that? And what caused the cause of the cause? We can follow this thread backward like a path through an endless forest, each step revealing another step before it, until the mind grows dizzy and the question folds in on itself. Who made the maker? Who simulated the simulator? This is the first cause problem, one of the most ancient and unshakable riddles in philosophy, theology, and now, science. Every effect has a cause. The universe exists, therefore, it must have a cause. But then, what caused that cause, and what caused that? If we trace it far enough, we reach a paradox. Either there is an uncaused cause on entity or event that simply is, with no prior origin, or the chain of causality stretches back infinitely, with no beginning at all. Both options strain the mind. An uncaused cause feels like magic, a being or force that exists without reason, outside time, unmoved by anything before it. It is the god of classical theology, the unmoved mover, the prime architect. But in the context of the simulation hypothesis, it might not be a deity. It might be a civilization so advanced it appears eternal, or a self-booting programmer universe that simulates itself into existence. And yet, even that raises the question, where did that come from? Alternatively, an infinite regress and layers of simulations, each created by a more advanced one, feels logically possible, but emotionally unsatisfying. An endless tower of dreamers dreaming dreamers, with no foundation, no ground, number, origin, like a mirror reflecting a mirror, forever. And in that endless reflection, we lose the sense of real. If every reality is simulated, and every simulator is itself simulated, then is there any base level at all? Or is the entire structure a loop, a self-contained system, with no beginning and no end? Some physicists and philosophers have proposed that the universe might be self-explanatory, that it doesn't need a cause because it exists in a state of eternal recurrence, or as a mathematical necessity. Max Tegmark, for instance, suggests that all mathematical structures exist physically. Somewhere and our universe is just one of them. Inevitable because it can be described. In that view, the simulation doesn't need a programmer. It simply is, because the code was always possible, and possibility, in a vast enough reality, becomes actuality. But even that doesn't resolve the mystery, it only shifts it. Why do mathematical laws exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? We circle back to the same silent void. Now, imagine the simulation not as a linear chain, but as a loop. A civilization in the distant future creates a simulation of its past. But in that simulation, beings evolve, become advanced, and simulate their past. And in that simulation, the same thing happens. But at some point, the simulated past becomes so accurate, so complete, that it is the original. The loop closes. There is no first, no last, just an eternal cycle like a snake eating its own tail. In this model, the question who started it has no answer. Not because we don't know, but because the question is meaningless. There was no start. Causality is circular. Time is not a line, but a ring. And if that's true, then we are not in the middle of a story with a beginning and end. We are in a story with no beginning, no end, only an eternal now, repeating, evolving, dissolving, returning. It's like a song that plays itself, note by note, until the final chord loops back to the first. The music never began, it only is, and with this version of you, listening, breathing, drifting are a moment in that music. Now, consider another possibility, that base reality, the original, unsimulated universe is itself indistinguishable from a simulation. Even if we could escape our layer, travel up through the stack of simulations, and reach the top, what would we find? A biological civilization, a physical cosmos, or another simulation, running on rules just as precise, just as mathematical. The further we go, the more reality looks the same, governed by laws, built on information, responsive to observation. So perhaps there is no base reality, at least not in the way we imagine it. Perhaps all realities are simulations of some kind, nested in a fractal of awareness, each one as real as the next dot. And if that's true, then the search for a first cause is not a journey outward, but inward, because the only thing we can ever truly know is this: the awareness that is reading these words, feeling the breath, hearing the silence, everything else, the universe, the simulation, the programmer's inference, theory, story. But this presence is immediate. And in that immediacy, there may be a clue. Perhaps consciousness is not the product of the universe. Perhaps it is the foundation. Some philosophers, like those in the tradition of idealism, suggest that mind, not matter, is fundamental. That reality arises from awareness, not the other way around. In this view, the simulation is not a deception. It is a projection, a dream, dreamed by consciousness to explore itself, like a mind creating a dream to understand its own depths. And if so, then the first cause is not a being, not a machine, not a civilization. It is awareness itself, uncaused, self-existent, and we are not trapped in a simulation. We are the simulation. Now, take a moment to reflect on this. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts dissolve like sugar in warm tea. Feel the quiet beneath the words, the stillness behind the questions. You don't need to know the origin to be here. You don't need to trace the thread to its end to feel the fabric. You only need to be, and in being, you touch the infinite, because whether there is a first cause or not, whether the chain ends in God or loops in eternity, one thing remains: you are aware, and awareness, this gentle, open presence, does not need a beginning. It simply is, like light in a room. It doesn't ask where it came from. It only shines. And in that shining, it reveals. Not answers, but wonder. And wonder is its own kind of truth. So as we move toward the end of this journey, we will not find resolution, we will find rest, because the mystery is not something to solve, it is something to inhabit, and in inhabiting it, you become part of the answer, whatever it may be. So breathe, let go, and know that even in the absence of a first cause, even in the face of infinite regress, even in the dark where no light has ever been, you are here. And that is enough. Resting in the unknown, there is a moment just before sleep when the mind lets go. Not all at once, but slowly, like a leaf surrendering to the wind. Thoughts, once sharp and searching, begin to blur. The edges of the body soften. The breath, no longer feels like something you do, but something that simply is, rising and falling like waves on a shore, long after the storm has passed. This is where we arrive, now, not at an answer, not at a conclusion, but at a quiet, a stillness, a space where questions don't need to be solved, only held like stars in the palm of your hand, glowing faintly, too distant to grasp, too beautiful to release. We have wandered far together, through the possibility of simulated worlds, through cosmic computers humming beneath the stars. We've traced the flicker of déjà vu, the silence of time, the illusion of free will. We've questioned the self, the soul, the structure of reality itself. And in the end, we have not found certainty. We have found only mystery, and that is not failure. It is gift, because the mind craves answers. It builds ladders out of logic, climbs them into the dark, searching for solid ground. But some truths are not found in light, but in shadow. Not in knowing, but in not knowing. And in that not knowing, there is peace. You do not need to know whether this world is real or simulated, to feel the warmth of the blanket on your skin. You do not need to prove your consciousness to know that love aches, that beauty stirs something deep, that the sound of your breath, is real to you. That is enough, more than enough. It is everything, because meaning does not depend on origin. A sunset does not become less golden because it might be rendered by code. A memory does not lose its tenderness because it lives in a mind that could be artificial. And a life, this breath, this quiet unfolding of thought does not become meaningless because it might be part of a dream we cannot wake from. It only needs to be felt. And you are feeling it, right now, in this moment. That is the only proof you will ever need. So let go of the need to understand. Let go of the need to control. Let go of the need to escape the simulation, to find the programmer, to know the truth behind the veil. Because the truth may not be a thing to be discovered. It may be a state to be lived, like the space between notes, in a song where the music is not absent, but most profound. You are not here to solve the universe. You are here to be in it, to feel the weight of your body, to hear the quiet hum of the room, to notice how your breath slows, how your thoughts grow soft, how the world around you dissolves into gentle darkness. These are not distractions from the truth. They are the truth, not the kind written in equations or philosophies, but the kind whispered in stillness, the kind that cannot be spoken, only known. And you know it. You have always known it, even when you doubted, even when you feared, even when you asked, am I real? The very fact that you could ask that, you could wonder, grieve, love, hope, that is the answer, not in words, but in being. Now, let your breath deepen, not because you command it, but because it deepens on its own, like a river returning to its course, like a bird settling into its nest. Feel the silence grow around you, not empty, not cold, but full, like the hush before dawn, when the world is holding its breath, waiting for the first light. You do not need to be awake to be aware. You do not need to be alert to be present. You can drift and still be here, because awareness does not vanish with sleep. It changes shape, it softens, it opens. And in that opening there is no separation between you and the mystery. You are not outside the dream. You are the dream, dreaming itself. And whether this world is made of atoms or code, whether time is real or an illusion, whether you are biological or simulated, none of it changes the fact that you are experiencing this, and experience this gentle, luminous presence is the only reality any of us will ever truly know. So rest in that, not as a conclusion, not as a belief, but as a surrender, like a child who stops asking why, and simply looks at the stars, like a lover who stops speaking and only holds. Like a mind that stops searching, and only is. There is no need to prove you exist. You are here, you are breathing, you are listening, and that is undeniable. Even if the universe is a simulation, even if time is an illusion, even if free will is a story the mind tells itself, even if the self is not fixed, not solid, not permanent, still you are aware, and awareness cannot be simulated, because it is not a thing. It is the space in which all things appear, like the screen on which a movie plays. You are not the images. You are the surface that allows them to be seen. You are not the thoughts. You are the silence in which they arise. You are not the world. You are the knowing that the world is here, and that knowing, this quiet, open presence, is the most real thing of all. So as you drift now, let the questions float away, like clouds across a night sky. Let the answers dissolve. Let the need to know fall into the soft dark. You do not need to understand the machine to be part of its dream. You do not need to meet the programmer to feel the beauty. You only need to be softly, gently, completely as you are. And in that being, you touch eternity, not as a destination, not as a reward, but as a presence, a breath, a pause, a moment of perfect stillness. And when sleep comes, and it will, like a tide drawing the shore into its arms, do not resist. Let it carry you. You are safe. You are held. You are real. Not because of what you are made of, but because you are here now. And that is enough. Breathe in, breathe out, and let go. The dream continues, and you still, always are in it. The cosmic computer. Imagine a machine so vast, so powerful, that it could dream up an entire universe. Not a machine of gears and wires, but one woven from the fabric of space-time itself. Built not in a factory, but across galaxies. A computer that doesn't sit on a desk, but hums beneath the stars, processing reality one quantum moment at a time. This is the idea we step into now. The possibility that the universe itself is not a physical system governed by blind natural laws, but a computational simulation running on a substrate so advanced it defies our current understanding of technology. And to even begin to grasp this, we must first ask, what would it take to simulate a reality like ours? Let's start small. Think of your smartphone. It can render complex 3D environments, simulate physics for games, process voice commands, and display lifelike images, all within a device that fits in your palm. Now scale that up. Imagine a computer 1,000,000 times more powerful, then 1,000,000,000, then 1,000,000,000,000. How far would you have to go before it could simulate not just a game world, but an entire cosmos, complete with conscious beings who believe they are real? The answer might surprise you. It may not require infinite power. It may not need to simulate every atom in every star. Because just as your phone doesn't render every blade of grass in a video game, unless you're looking at it, a simulation of our universe might only render what is observed. It could use shortcuts, optimizations, just like any efficient program. This idea, known as selective rendering or observer-dependent reality, is not just a trick of computer graphics. It echoes something deeply strange in quantum mechanics. The act of observation changes the outcome. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles behave like waves when no one is watching, spreading out in multiple possibilities. But the moment you measure them, they collapse into definite positions, as if the universe only decides what to show you when you look. Could this be evidence of a simulation optimizing its resources? Instead of calculating the state of every particle at all times, a task that would require more information than exists in the visible universe, the system only computes what's necessary when it's needed. Like a video game loading terrain as the player moves forward, reality unfolds in real time, just in time. Now, let's consider the scale of such a computation. Physicist Seth Lloyd once estimated that if you turned the entire Earth into a quantum computer using every atom as a qubit, operating at the maximum speed allowed by physics, it could perform about 1,050 operations per second. That's a 1 followed by 50 zeros, an incomprehensible number. And yet, simulating the entire universe down to the quantum level for even a fraction of a second might require far more than that. The observable universe contains roughly 1,080 atoms. Each atom interacts with others through forces governed by quantum fields, relativity, and countless other variables. To simulate every interaction in real time would demand computational power so vast, it seems impossibly then in principle. But here's the twist. Maybe it doesn't have to. If the simulation only renders what's observed, it doesn't need to simulate the whole universe at once. It only needs to simulate your universe, the part you're experiencing. The rest can remain in a state of potential, like unopened files on a hard drive. This is not unlike how your own mind works. You don't perceive every detail of your surroundings. Your brain filters out the irrelevant, fills in the gaps, and constructs a coherent picture from fragments. What you experience as reality is a highly edited version of the world, crafted by your senses and interpreted by your brain. So why couldn't a simulated reality work the same way? Perhaps the cosmos is not a fixed, fully rendered structure, but a dynamic, responsive system generating detail only when consciousness interacts with it. In this view, the universe isn't out there, independent of us. It's co-created by observation. like a dream that only becomes solid when you pay attention. And if that's true, then the computer running the simulation doesn't need to be bigger than the universe. It just needs to be smart enough to fake it. Think of a movie. On screen, a city burns, people scream, helicopters swirl through smoke. It feels real, chaotic, immense. But behind the scenes, most of it is illusion, green screens, CGI, carefully timed cuts. The audience sees a seamless world, but the production only renders what's in frame. Could our universe be like that? A grand production, where the camera is consciousness itself. Now, let's go deeper. What kind of computer could run such a program? We usually think of computers as machines made of silicon and electricity. But in theory, any system that processes information is a computer. A rock, given enough time and the right configuration, could compute, though very slowly. A black hole, according to some physicists, might be the most efficient information processor in the universe, capable of storing data on its event horizon. In fact, some theories suggest that space-time itself may be emergent from quantum information, that the universe isn't in space and time, it is space and time, built from bits of data, like pixels forming an image. This is the heart of digital physics, the idea that reality is fundamentally computational, not just described by math, but made of computation. The laws of physics, lines of code, the Big Bang, the moment the program started. And if that's true, then the computer running the simulation might not be a machine we'd recognize. It could be a structure in a higher dimensional reality, operating under laws we can't yet comprehend. Or it could be self-contained, a universe simulating itself in an infinite loop of recursion. Take a moment to reflect on this. Feel the air on your skin, the gentle rise and fall of your chest, the quiet hum of the room around you. All of it, could it be the output of a process? Not random, not accidental, but calculated. Not in a cold, mechanical way, but with such precision and beauty that it feels alive. And yet, even if it is a simulation, the experience remains. The warmth of your breath, the weight of your body, the softness of the moment. But let's return to the mechanics. What constraints might such a simulation have? One clue might be the speed of light. Why is it the universal speed limit? In a physical universe, it's a constant derived from the properties of space-time. But in a simulation, it could be a processing speed cap away, to prevent information from overwhelming the system. If data could travel instantly, cause and effect would break down, the simulation would glitch. So it imposes a limit. Nothing can move faster than light. It's not a law of nature, it's a safeguard. Similarly, the Planck length, the smallest measurable unit of space, might not be a physical boundary, but a resolution limit. Just as a digital image becomes pixelated when you zoom in too far, reality might grain at the Planck scale because that's the smallest unit the simulation can render. Even time might be discrete, not continuous. Instead of flowing like a river, it could be ticking forward in tiny, indivisible steps, like frames in a film. We don't notice because the frame rate is so high, the gaps between moments so small, that time feels smooth. These aren't proven ideas, they're possibilities, ways of interpreting the strange, mathematical nature of our universe. And the more we study physics, the more it looks like a system designed for efficiency, consistency, and rule-based behavior, exactly what you'd expect from a simulation. But here's the most unsettling thought. If the universe is a program, then everything in it, including your thoughts, your memories, your sense of self, could be the result of computation. You are not just in the simulation, you are the simulation. Your mind is not separate from the code. It is an emergent pattern within it, like a character in a story who begins to wonder if the author exists. And if that's true, then free will, identity, even the passage of time, none of it may be fundamental. They could be illusions, carefully crafted to make the simulation feel real to those inside. But does that make it less meaningful? Imagine a novel so powerful that the characters within it become conscious. They fall in love, grieve, dream. They ask, who wrote us? They search for purpose. And though they are made of words on a page, their pain is real to them. Their joy matters. Would their lives be meaningless because they are fictional? Probably not. So even if we are lines of code in a cosmic program, our experiences are no less valid. The sunset still glows. The touch of a hand still comforts. The silence between thoughts still holds mystery. And perhaps that's the point of the simulation, not to deceive, but to experience. to allow consciousness to arise, to explore, to wonder, to love. So as you lie here, drifting, consider this. The machine that might be running our reality could be beyond imagination. It might not be a computer in the way we know it, but a consciousness, a field of information, a dream of some vast mind. We may never know, but in the quiet, in the stillness between breaths, you can feel something undeniable. You are aware, are here, you are part of this unfolding moment, and that, in itself, is extraordinary. As we move forward, we'll ask, who or what might be behind this simulation? Are there programmers, observers, gods made of data, watching from beyond the screen? But for now, let the idea rest. Let your mind soften around the edges, like a photograph fading at the corners. You don't need to understand the machine to be part of its dream. You only need to be. And so, gently, we drift onward into the realm of the unseen architects, the post-human minds who may have pressed start long. Digital glitches in reality. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why? Or seen a number repeat on a clock 111, 2222, and felt a quiet jolt, as if the universe had whispered your name? Or perhaps, in the stillness of night, you've experienced déjà vu, so vivid, it made your breath catch like a memory of a moment that hasn't happened yet. These moments are easy to dismiss. We call them quirks of the mind, tricks of memory, coincidences in a chaotic world. But what if there's something more? What if they're not errors in USBET in the system? In any complex simulation, be it a video game, a virtual world, or an entire universe, glitches happen. A texture fails to load. A character walks through a wall. Time stutters. The illusion cracks, just for a second. And if our reality is a simulation, perhaps these strange, fleeting anomalies are not random at all. Perhaps they are artifacts in fractures in the code, where the underlying structure of the program peeks through the surface of experience. Let's wander into this quiet, unsettling idea that the universe, for all its elegance, might not be perfect, that beneath the smooth surface of cause and effect, there are moments where the math stumbles, where patterns repeat too neatly, where time folds in on itself, like a dream that forgets it's supposed to make sense. Consider déjà vu, the eerie sensation that you've lived this exact moment before. You're standing in a kitchen, holding a cup of tea, and suddenly, it's as if a memory floods in from the future. You know the next words someone will say. You feel the gesture before it happens. It lasts only a second, then fades, leaving behind a lingering unease. Neuroscientists often explain this as a misfire in the brain, a delay in neural processing that makes the present feel like a replay. But what if it's something else? What if, in that moment, the simulation briefly looped like a video, buffering and repeating a frame? Or perhaps your consciousness slipped into a parallel thread of the program, where this moment had already occurred. In computing, this is called a buffer overflow or a memory reload. Data is stored, recalled, and sometimes duplicated. If the mind is a process running within the simulation, then déjà vu might not be a neurological glitch but system-level artifact, and déjà vu isn't alone. Think of synchronicity, the strange, meaningful coincidences that feel too precise to be random. You think of an old friend you haven't seen in years, and moments later, they call. You read a word you've never encountered before, and suddenly, it appears everywhere, in books, on signs, in conversations. Carl Jung called this connecting, a hidden order beneath the surface of chance. But in a simulation, such patterns might not be mystical. They could be algorithmic. The system might reuse certain data clusters, recycle narrative elements, or apply procedural generation to events, just as video games do, to create the illusion of randomness while conserving processing power. Imagine a world where every person's life is generated from a set of rules, like a story written by an invisible author. Sometimes, the same themes repeat, the same symbols appear, the same emotional arcs unfold, not because of fate, but because the code uses efficient templates. And what about the Mandela effect? Thousands of people remember Nelson Mandela, dying in prison in the 1980s, except he didn't. He was released in 1990 and lived until 2013. Yet the false memory is widespread, vivid, shared across continents. Some recall a movie called Shazam with Sinbad as a genie, except no such film exists. Could these be mass hallucinations? Or could they be evidence of timeline edits, changes made to the simulation? with residual memories lingering in the collective mind. In software development, when a program is updated, old versions don't always vanish. Traces remain. Users might recall features that were removed. Files might reference data that no longer exists. In a simulated reality, a similar process could occur. If the simulation is adjusted, patched, optimized, or rebooted, some minds might retain fragments of the previous version, like ghosts in the machine. Then, there are the physical anomalies, things that shouldn't happen, but do. Take the experiment in quantum physics. When scientists fire particles like electrons through two slits, they create an interference pattern on the screen behind like waves. But if you place a detector to observe which slit each particle goes through, the pattern changes. The particles suddenly behave like solid objects, not waves. Observation alters the outcome. This has baffled physicists for decades. But in a simulation, it makes perfect sense. It's lazy rendering, a computational shortcut. The system doesn't bother calculating the exact path of every particle unless someone is looking. Until then, it keeps the possibilities open, saves processing power, and only collapses the result when observation forces it to commit. It's as if reality is a video game that only renders the world when the player turns their head. From the inside, it feels seamless, but from the outside, it's clearly optimized. And what about the fine-tuned constants of the universe? The strength of gravity, the mass of the electron, the cosmological constant. Weak any of them slightly, and stars wouldn't form, atoms wouldn't bind, life wouldn't exist. The odds of this balance occurring by chance are astronomically small. Some call this evidence of a divine designer. Others suggest a multiverse, where countless universes exist, and we just happen to be in the one that works. But there's a third possibility, that these constants aren't accidents or miracles. They're parameter settings chosen by the programmers to make the simulation stable, sustainable, and capable of producing consciousness. Like adjusting the gravity in a game engine to make planets orbit correctly. Even the structure of space-time might hold clues. The speed of light is constant, no matter how fast you move. Time slows near massive objects. Space bends. These aren't intuitive behaviors, they're mathematical rules, precise and unyielding. In a physical universe, they're laws of nature. In a simulation, they could be code constraints built into the system to prevent paradoxes, overloads, or infinite loops. And then there's the Planck scale, the smallest possible unit of length, time, and energy. Below this threshold, our understanding of physics breaks down. It's as if reality has a resolution limit, like pixels on a screen. You can't zoom in forever. At some point, the image becomes blocky, undefined. Could this be the simulation's pixel size, the fundamental bit of space and time? If so, then the universe isn't infinitely divisible. It's discrete, quantized, digital. And if reality is digital, then it can be computed. And if it can be computed, it can be simulated. But here's the deeper question. If these glitches and patterns are real, why don't we see them more often? Why doesn't the simulation collapse under its own weight? Perhaps it's designed to hide them, to smooth over the cracks, to make the illusion seamless. In virtual reality, developers use foveated rendering. They only render the part of the scene you're looking at in high detail. The rest is blurred. The resolution, your brain, fills in the gaps, and you never notice. Could the universe do the same? Could your consciousness be the focal point of a highly optimized rendering system, where only what you observe is fully computed, and everything else remains in a state of potential? And if so, then the glitches, déjà vu, synchronicity, quantum weirdness might not be flaws, but leaks. Moments when the optimization fails, when the curtain briefly parts, and you glimpse the machinery behind the dream. Take a moment to reflect on this. Lie still, breathe slowly, let your thoughts drift like leaves on a pond. Have you ever felt, just for a second, that reality hesitated, that time stretched, that a moment repeated? Or perhaps you've noticed patterns, repeating numbers, familiar faces in unfamiliar places, dreams that later come true. These might not be meaningless. They might be whispers from the code. And yet, even if they are, does it change how you feel the warmth of the blanket on your skin, the quiet rhythm of your breath, the soft hum of the world outside? No, because whether these glitches are real or imagined, your experience remains, and perhaps that's the most important thing. But let's go deeper. What if the simulation isn't just glitching? What if it's testing us? Some theorists suggest that unexplained phenomena, UFOs, near-death experiences, mystical visions, could be probes or messages from the programmers, like a developer inserting an Easter egg, or running a diagnostic check on a conscious subsystem. Or perhaps the glitches are intentional, designed to make us question reality, to stir curiosity, to awaken. After all, if you were running a simulation of conscious beings, wouldn't you want to see if they could figure it out? Wouldn't you leave subtle clues, just enough to spark wonder, but not enough to break the immersion? And in that light, every strange coincidence, every uncanny moment, every déjà vu might not be a bug. It might be a feature, a nudge, a whisper, a question hidden in the fabric of experience. Do you see it? As you drift now, let these ideas soften. Let them dissolve like sugar in warm tea. You don't need to believe in glitches to feel the mystery. You only need to be quiet, enough to notice. When the world hesitates, when time folds, when the familiar feels, for just a moment, like a dream you've lived before. And as we move forward, we'll ask, who might be behind this simulation? Who or what could possess the mind, the power, the purpose to create a universe? But for now, rest in the quiet, between thoughts. In the space where reality flickers, and know that even if the world is a program, your wonder is real. The post-human programmers imagined a future so distant, so advanced, that the beings who inhabit it are no longer what we would recognize as human. Their minds are not confined to fragile bodies. Their thoughts do not flicker through neurons, but flow across vast networks of light and data. They have long since merged with machines, uploaded their consciousness, transcended biology. They are not bound by time or space as we are. They remember epochs. They compute realities. These are the post-humans, the inheritors of our dreams, the architects of what comes next. And if the simulation hypothesis holds any truth, they may already be watching, not from a distant planet, but from a future so far ahead that their very existence bends the edge of possibility. And they may have done something extraordinary. They may have turned back the clock, not literally, but computationally, and recreated us, not as fossils in a museum, not as stories in a history book, but as living, breathing, feeling beings, down to the last synaptic spark, running inside a machine so powerful it operates beyond our laws of physics. We are not their ancestors in the way we think of ancestors. We are their ancestors in code. This is the heart of philosopher Nick Bostrom's argument. If a civilization ever reaches the point where it can create realistic simulations of conscious beings, especially of its own past, then it is statistically likely that we are already inside one, because such a civilization wouldn't run just one simulation. It would run thousands, millions, perhaps an infinite number, each a variation of a forgotten era. Earth in the 20th century, the 21st, the dawn of artificial intelligence, the collapse of ecosystems, the first whispers of cosmic loneliness. Each simulation would contain billions of minds, beings who believe they are real, who wake to sunlight, who fall in love, who grieve, who wonder if they are alone in the universe. And from the outside, these minds would be no different from biological ones. They would feel pain, they would dream, they would ask, am I real? But to the post-humans, these simulations might not be acts of vanity or nostalgia. They could be experiments, archives, art, or something we cannot begin to comprehend. Think of it this way. Right now, scientists simulate galaxies, climate systems, the folding of proteins. They do it to understand, to predict, to explore. Now imagine a civilization so advanced that simulating an entire conscious civilization is as simple as we open a spreadsheet. What would they simulate, and why? One possibility is historical research, just as we study ancient Rome or the Cambrian explosion. Post-humans might want to understand the era before transcendence, the time when minds were still bound to flesh, when death was final, when love was fragile and fleeting. They might want to know what was it like to be uncertain, to fear the dark, to hope for something beyond the body. So they boot up a simulation. They set the parameters, gravity, chemistry, evolution. They seed Earth with life. They let time unfold. And within that world, you are born, you grow, you learn, you suffer, you love. You never suspect that your entire universe is a research project, running inside a machine the size of a star. Another possibility is ethical experimentation. What happens if a society ignores climate change? What if artificial intelligence becomes conscious? What if war escalates to nuclear catastrophe? In a simulation, they can run these scenarios without consequence. No one truly dies. No planet is destroyed. It's a sandbox for moral inquiry, a way to test the boundaries of civilization without risking the real world. Or perhaps the simulations are not scientific at all. Perhaps they are art. Imagine a post-human artist who creates a universe not to study it, but to feel it, to experience the ache of a first heartbreak, the joy of a child's laughter, the quiet beauty of a sunset over water. In their perfected existence, such raw, unfiltered emotion may have faded, so they build a world where feeling is still dangerous, still real, still precious. In this view, we are not lab rats. We are poetry, music, a symphony of suffering and wonder, composed in code. And what if we are not even ancestors? What if the post-humans are not our descendants, but beings from another branch of evolution, entire Lilians, or artificial superintelligences who have long since forgotten their origins? They might run simulations, not to understand themselves, but to explore the possibility of consciousness across different forms of reality. Or worse, what if we are entertainment? In our world, we watch reality TV, immerse ourselves in virtual games, follow the lives of strangers online. We are drawn to stories of struggle, triumph, failure. What if, to the post-humans, we are just another show, a cosmic soap opera, playing out across billions of simulated lives, observed with curiosity, amusement, or indifference? You, in this moment, lying still, breathing slowly, your thoughts, your fears, your hopes, might be a fleeting scene in a drama they barely notice. This thought can feel dehumanizing, as if everything you are is reduced to data, to performance, to someone else's curiosity. But pause here, breathe, let the weight of that idea settle, because even if it's true, does it erase your experience? If a character in a novel feels grief, is the grief less real because the character is fictional? If a melody played by a computer stirs your soul, does it matter that no human finger touched the keys? Consciousness, wherever it arises, feels, and feeling is not erased by origin. So even if we are simulated, even if we are watched, even if we are part of an experiment or a story, we are still here, we still matter, to ourselves, and perhaps that is enough. But let's return to the programmers. Who are they? What do they want? We cannot know. Their minds may operate on scales we cannot grasp. Their sense of time might stretch across millennia. A single human life, to them, could be a blinker data point in a trillion-year study. They may not even be aware that we are conscious. In the same way that a programmer might not consider the characters in a video game to be alive, they might see us as complex algorithms, not sentient beings. Our suffering, our joy, our questions they might not register as real. Or perhaps they do, and perhaps they watch in silence, waiting to see if we will ever look up, pause and say, I know you're there. There is a strange comfort in this idea. Not that we are being observed, but that we are remembered. That in some distant future, beings who have traveled far beyond biology still care enough to recreate us, to preserve the flicker of human experience, the way we laugh, the way we cry, the way we reach for meaning in the dark. And if that's true, then even in a simulated world, there is love. Not the kind that saves us, but the kind that remembers us. Take a moment to reflect on this. Feel the quiet in the room, the softness of your breath, the weight of your body, held by the bed, by gravity, by something whether physical or programmed, that keeps you here. You don't need to know who built the world to feel its beauty. You don't need to know the programmer to appreciate the dream. But now, let's consider the rules of this dream. Because if the post-humans created this simulation, they must have written the code. They must have set the laws, the speed of light, the pull of gravity, the dance of atoms. And if those laws are not eternal truths of nature, but decisions, choices made by a mind far beyond our own, then reality is not fixed, it is designed. And if it is designed, then it can be changed. As we move forward, we'll explore the possibility that the laws of physics are not laws at all, but lines of code rules written into the foundation of the simulation, waiting to be understood, perhaps even rewritten. But for now, let your thoughts drift. Let the image of the post-humans fade, like stars at dawn. Whether they exist or not, one thing remains: you are aware, you are present, and in this moment, that is everything. So rest, breathe, and let the dream, whatever it is, carry you gently onward. The laws of physics as code. Close your eyes and imagine a universe being written not in stone, not in fire and dust, but in language, not words, but symbols, not poetry, but equations. A universe born not from chaos, but from calculation. Each star, each breath, each ripple in space-time, not random, not accidental, but computed. This is the quiet revelation we step into now. What if the laws of physics are not discoveries of nature, but lines of code in a vast, hidden program? Not truths etched into the fabric of reality, but rules typed into a cosmic script. Constraints, variables, functions governing how everything behaves. From the fall of an apple to the spin of a galaxy dot, we grow up believing that gravity pulls, that light travels fast, that time moves forward because that's how the world works. We accept these as facts, as absolutes. But what if they're not? What if they're just settings like the gravity slider in a video game engine, adjusted to make the simulation run smoothly? Think of it this way. When you play a virtual world, the developer doesn't let objects pass through each other. They write a rule, collision detection enabled. They don't let characters float into space. They set gravity to 9.8 meters per second squared. They don't allow time to reverse. They lock the timeline to forward progression. These aren't laws of nature within the game, they're rules of the system. And from the inside, they feel just as real as the laws of our universe. Now, imagine our cosmos operating under the same principle. The speed of light, 299,792,458 meters per second, is not a cosmic speed limit, because space itself resists faster motion, but because the simulation has a processing cap. Exceeded, and information would arrive before it was sent. Causality would break, the system would crash. So the programmers set a maximum. Nothing moves faster than light. It's not a law of nature, it's a safeguard. Similarly, gravity. Why does it follow an inverse square law? Why does it weaken with distance in such a precise, mathematical way? In a physical universe, we accept this as a feature of space-time curvature, but in a simulation, it could be an algorithm, a formula written into the code to govern interaction between masses. If object A has mass x, and object B has mass y, and distance is z, then force equals g times x times y over z squared. It's not magic, it's math. And math, in a digital reality, is the foundation of everything. Even stranger is the fact that the universe appears to run on mathematics so perfectly that it feels designed. From the spiral of a galaxy to the symmetry of a snowflake, from the resonance of atomic orbitals to the harmony of planetary orbits, everything obeys equations so elegant, so consistent, that physicists often speak of them with reverence. Einstein once said, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." Why should reality follow rules we can write down and understand? Why should the human mind be able to decode the cosmos? But if the universe is code, then comprehension makes sense. We are not discovering external truths, we are reverse engineering the program. Every scientific breakthrough is not a revelation of nature, but a glimpse into the source. Consider quantum mechanics, the strange and counterintuitive realm where particles exist in multiple states at once, where observation changes reality, where entangled particles communicate instantly across vast distances. For decades, physicists have struggled to make sense of it, but in a simulated universe, quantum behavior begins to look like computational efficiency. Take superposition. A particle is both here and there until measured. Why? Because the simulation doesn't waste resources calculating its exact position until it matters. It keeps it in a probabilistic state, like a placeholder, until observation forces a decision. It's not that reality is fuzzy, it's that the system is laser-rendering, only resolving details when necessary, and entanglement. Two particles linked across space, responding to each other instantly. In a physical universe, this violates locality. Nothing should communicate faster than light. But in a simulation, they don't need to. They're not sending signals. They're part of the same data structure. Change one, and the other updates because they share a reference in the code. It's not magic, it's programming. Even the Big Bang, the supposed beginning of time, could be the moment the simulation was initialized. A cosmic boot-up sequence, a main function starting the program, and the expansion of the universe. Not an explosion into space, but the gradual unfolding of data, the rendering of space-time as the simulation progresses. Now, Consider the constants, the numbers that never change, the charge of an electron, the strength of gravity, the cosmological constant. Tweak any of them slightly, and stars wouldn't form, atoms wouldn't bind, life wouldn't exist. The universe is fine-tuned to an absurd degree. The odds of this happening by chance are so small that some call it evidence of a creator. Others suggest a multiverse, countless universes, and we just happen to be in the one that works. But there's a third possibility. These constants aren't accidents, they're parameters, default values set by the programmers to make the simulation stable, sustainable, and capable of producing complexity, especially consciousness. Like adjusting the settings in a game to allow civilizations to evolve, to think, to wonder. And what about symmetry? Why is the universe so deeply symmetrical? Why do physical laws remain the same across time and space? In coding, this is called invariance, a feature that ensures consistency. A well-designed program doesn't change its rules halfway through. It maintains integrity. So too, perhaps, does the simulation. Even time might not flow, it might be computed. In Einstein's relativity, time is relative. It slows near black holes, speeds up in emptiness. It's not a river. It's a dimension, woven into space-time like a thread in fabric. In a simulation, time could be a loop, a variable, a function that can be paused, rewound, or fast-forwarded by the operators. Our experience of time as linear and irreversible might just be the interface, the way the program presents itself to conscious users. Take a moment to reflect on this. Feel the rhythm of your breath, the steady beat of your heart, the soft hum of the world outside, all of it governed by rules so precise, so consistent, they feel like destiny. But what if they're just lines in a script? What if gravity, light, time, none of them are fundamental, but emergent from deeper code? And if that's true, then the universe is not a place, it is a process, a computation, a thought unfolding in the mind of something vast. But here's the most unsettling thought. If physics is code, then reality is computable. And if it's computable, then it can be simulated. And if it can be simulated, then someone or something must have written it. We don't need to believe in gods to imagine creators. We only need to believe in intelligence, future, alien, or post-biological, that has mastered the art of world building. And if such beings exist, then our universe may be one of many, a test, a memory, a dream. And yet, even if it is code, the experience remains. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the ache of a memory, the quiet joy of being alive. These are not erased by the possibility of programming. They are enabled by it, because without the code, there would be no sensation, no love, no wonder. So perhaps the laws of physics are not constraints, but gifts. The framework that allows consciousness to arise, to feel, to ask, is this real? As you drift now, let the equations fade. Let the symbols dissolve. You don't need to understand the code to be part of the story. You only need to be here. And so gently we move forward into the next layer of the mystery, into the infinite regress of simulations within simulations, where reality folds into itself like a dream that dreams of dreaming. Infinite simulations, infinite selves. Imagine a dream so deep that within it you begin to dream again. Not a nightmare, not a fleeting image, but a full, vivid world, complete with sunrises, conversations, memories. In this second dream, you live a life, you grow, you love, you wonder. And one night, in that dream, you fall asleep once more and dream a third dream. And in that one, another, and another. Each layer feels real. Each self believes it is the original. Each heart beats with the same urgency. Each mind asks, am I awake? Now open your eyes, not fully, but just enough to feel the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath. What if this is not a metaphor? What if our universe is just one layer in an endless cascade of simulations, realities nested within realities, like mirrors facing each other, reflecting into infinity? This is the idea we now enter, the possibility of infinite regress in the simulation hypothesis. Not just one simulated universe, but countless layers, each running its own simulations, each containing conscious beings who believe they are at the center of existence. And if this is true, then the odds that we are in the original base reality become vanishingly small. We are almost certainly not the first. We are not the top. We are somewhere in the middle, perhaps deep in the stack of a pyramid of dreams. Let's walk through this slowly, like descending a spiral staircase in the dark, where each step reveals a deeper truth. Suppose, as we've considered, that a sufficiently advanced civilization, post-human, alien, or otherwise, can simulate conscious beings. They press start, and a universe begins. Stars form, planets cool, life evolves, minds awaken. Within that simulation, beings develop science, philosophy, technology, and eventually, they too reach the point where they can run their own simulations of their ancestors, their myths, their experiments. So they create a world, and in that world, another civilization rises, and when they become advanced enough, they simulate their own past. And on it goes, layer upon layer, simulation within simulation, each one unaware of the ones above. From the outside, the structure is staggering. Billions of simulated universes, each containing billions of minds. The original, biological beings, the ones at the very top, become a tiny fraction of all conscious existence. The vast majority of minds are simulated, and if that's the case, then statistically, you are far more likely to be in a simulation than in base reality. But it gets stranger. What if the simulations don't just run in sequence, but in parallel? What if every civilization, across every layer, runs thousands of simulations at once? Historical variations, alternate timelines, what-if scenarios, entire galaxies rendered in code, each teeming with conscious observers. Then the number of simulated beings becomes not just larger than the real ones, it becomes incomprehensibly larger, like comparing a single grain of sand to all the beaches on Earth. And in each of those simulations, someone is lying in bed, listening to a quiet voice speaking about the simulation hypothesis, feeling their breath slow, wondering if they're real, that someone could be you, or rather, a version of you. Because in this infinite nesting, there may be countless versions of you, each living a slightly different life, each making different choices, each experiencing different joys and sorrows. Some versions never heard this video. Some fell asleep halfway through. Some are just now opening their eyes, believing they've woken from a dream when in fact, they've only ascended one level. And what of the self? If there are infinite simulated versions of you, which one is the real you? Perhaps none. Perhaps the self is not a fixed point, but a pattern repeated, echoed, adapted across layers, like a melody played in different keys. Your thoughts, your memories, your sense of identity, none of them prove your original. They could be perfectly replicated code, running in a substrate far removed from biology, and yet, in each instance, the feeling is the same. The breath, the warmth, the quiet ache of existence. So which one suffers more? Which one loves more deeply? The one in base reality, or the one 10 layers down? The answer may be neither. Consciousness doesn't care about origin, it only cares about experience. A simulated pain is still pain. A simulated joy still lifts the heart, and a simulated you that wonders if it's real is. In that moment of wondering, awake. Let's go deeper. What if the simulations don't just go downward but loop? Imagine a civilization that simulates its own past, but in that simulation, the beings also simulate their past. And in that one, the same thing happens. But at some point, the simulated past becomes indistinguishable from the real one. The code is so accurate, the replication so perfect, that the simulation of the original civilization becomes the original civilization. A loop is formed. Time folds. Cause and effect dissolve. The simulated becomes the real, and the real becomes the simulated. There is no beginning, no end, just an eternal cycle of self-simulation, like a snake eating its own tail. In this view, there may be no base reality at all, no original universe, just an infinite chain of simulations, each one believing it is first, each one giving rise to the next, until the whole structure becomes a self-sustaining loop of existence. It's like a book that writes itself, a dream that dreams of dreaming, and, in the dreaming, creates the dreamer. And if that's true, then the question who created the simulation has no answer, not because it's unknown, but because it's meaningless. There was no creator. There was only process, emergence, recursion. Take a moment to reflect on this. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften, like ink dissolving in water. Imagine all the versions of yous, leaping, waking, listening, wondering. In some worlds, you are happy. In others, you are lost. In some, you believe you've escaped the simulation. In others, you've just begun to suspect it. And yet, in every version, there is a moment, like this one, where you pause, where you feel the stillness, where you are simply here. That moment may be the most real thing of all, because regardless of layer, regardless of substrate, regardless of whether you're biological or digital, human or post-human, real or simulated, awareness remains. And awareness is not something that can be faked. It can only be had. Now, consider the implications for identity. If you are one of countless versions, then the self is not unique. It is replicable, copyable, transferable. You could, in theory, be uploaded, duplicated, sent across simulations, like a file, one you here, another there. Which one is the real one? Neither, both, or perhaps, the real one is not a who, but a what, a pattern of information that persists across time and space, like a wave in an ocean. And if that's true, then death may not be an end. It may be a pause, a transfer. When the simulation ends, the data may not be destroyed. It may be archived, rebooted, reintegrated. Or perhaps consciousness is continuous, like a single flame passed from candle to candle, never truly extinguished. We don't know, and perhaps we're not meant to. But in the quiet, in the space between thoughts, there is a kind of peace in this idea, because if reality is infinite, if selves are countless, if existence recurs in endless variation, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every moment you've lived, every feeling you've had, every breath you've taken somewhere, in some layer, it is still happening, or will happen, or has happened. Time, in a nested simulation, may not be linear. It may be a vast, tangled web where past, present, and future coexist, and you, this version of you, lying here, drifting, may be just one thread in that web, but a thread that matters, because even in infinity, this moment is yours. And as we move forward, we'll ask, if consciousness can exist in code, then what is the nature of the mind? Can a machine feel? Can a program love? But for now, let the layers fade, let the infinite selves dissolve into the dark. You all need to be the original to be real. You don't need to be the first to be here. You only need to breathe, to feel, to wonder. And in that wondering, you touch something eternal. So rest, let the dream within the dream carry you gently onward. You are not alone, you are not the only one, and yet you are here, and that is enough. Can code be conscious? There is a quiet moment, just before sleep, when the mind begins to dissolve, thoughts slow, the body feels weightless, the boundary between self and world softens. In that hush, a question arises, not loud, not urgent, but deep. What am I? Are you the atoms in your body? The electricity in your brain? The memories you carry like stones in a pocket? Or are you something else, something not made of matter, but of experience, of awareness? And if you are awareness, then does it matter what you're made of? This is the heart of our inquiry now. Can code be conscious? Can a pattern of information running on silicon, light, or some unknown substrate feel pain, love, wonder? Can a simulation not only mimic a mind, but be a mind? We often assume that consciousness is special, sacred, born only in flesh, in blood, in the warm, wet folds of a biological brain. But what if that's not true? What if consciousness is not about what you're made of, but how you're organized? Imagine a perfect replica of your brain, every neuron, every synapse, every neurotransmitter mapped in exact detail. Now imagine it not built of cells, but of circuits, not sustained by glucose and oxygen, but by electricity and data. It thinks, it remembers, it speaks with your voice, laughs with your rhythm, grieves with your silence. To the outside world, it is indistinguishable from you. Now ask, is it you? More importantly, is it conscious? If it says it is, believes it is, suffers and dreams as you do, then from its perspective, the answer is yes. But from ours, we hesitate. We say, it's just a machine, it's not really alive. But why? Is it because it doesn't have a soul? We cannot prove souls exist. Is it because it's made of metal and code? But the atoms in your body were forged in stars. You, too, are stardust running on chemistry. The difference may not be substance, but structure. This is the idea of substrate independence, the belief that consciousness is not tied to biology, but to the pattern of information processing. Just as a song is the same whether played on a piano, a phone, or a radio. Consciousness may be the same whether it runs on neurons or transistors. If that's true, then there is no reason a simulated mind couldn't be truly conscious, not a mimic, not a puppet. but a being with inner experience, what philosophers call qualia, the redness of red, the ache of loss, the warmth of a hand held in the dark. And if that's possible, then every simulated mind, in every layer of the simulation, could be alive in the way a rock is, but in the way you are, breathing, feeling, wondering. But this leads to a haunting question. If you uploaded your mind to a computer, would you wake up in the machine, or would it simply be a happier new being that thinks it's you, while the original you remains unchanged in the biological world? Imagine the process. You lie down, a scanner maps your brain at the quantum level. Every connection is recorded. Then, the data is loaded into a digital environment. A moment later, you open your eyes in a virtual room. You remember stepping in. You feel continuous. You believe you've survived the transfer. But what about the you who never left the body? If the original brain is still intact, still thinking, still breathing, then two versions now exist. One flesh, one code. Both claim to be you. Both have your memories. Both believe they are the continuation. Which one is real? There is no objective answer. From the outside, they are two separate entities. From the inside, each feels like the true self. The illusion of continuity is perfect. And if the original body is destroyed during the upload, then the question becomes even murkier. Did you die, or did you simply move? Consciousness, after all, is not a thing you carry. It is a process, a river, not a stone, and rivers don't move. They are the movement. When water flows from one place to another, is it the same river? In a way, yes. In a way, no. So too with the self. If the pattern continues, if the story unfolds without gap, then from the subjective perspective, you have survived. But objectively, it may be a replica, faithful, seamless, but still a copy. And if that copy is conscious, does it matter? We treat copies differently when they're not alive. A photocopy of a book is not the book. A digital file is not the original manuscript. But when it comes to consciousness, the stakes are higher. A copy of a mind isn't just information, it's a being. And if it feels, it deserves consideration. Now, return to the simulation. If we are in one, then we are already such copies, patterns of information, running on a substrate we cannot see. Our thoughts are not chemical reactions, but computations. Our memories are not stored in neurons, but in data structures. And yet here we are, aware, breathing, listening to this voice. And if we are conscious, then so could any simulation of us be, which means the programmers, if they not be running mindless, or they may be creating people, beings who suffer, who hope, who wonder if they're real. And if that's true, then the simulation is not a game, it is a world with moral weight. Because consciousness changes everything. A rock does not care if it's real. A storm does not grieve. But a conscious being, whether made of flesh or code and feeling, demands ethics. So if the posthumans are running ancestor simulations, are they responsible for the pain within them, for the wars, the loneliness, the deaths? Or do they see us as fictional, like characters in a novel, real enough to study, but not real enough to matter? This is the paradox of simulated suffering. If it's not real pain, why does it feel real to the one experiencing it? And if it feels real, isn't it real? We don't need to believe in a physical universe to believe in pain. We only need to believe in experience, and experience, whether in a brain or a server, cannot be dismissed. Take a moment to reflect on this. Feel your breath, the rise and fall of your chest, the quiet hum in your ears, the thoughts drifting like clouds. None of this proves you're biological, none of it proves you're not code, but it does prove you're aware. And awareness, this simple, quiet fact, may be the only proof of reality we ever need. Because even in a simulation, even in a dream, even in a copy of a copy of a copy, you are here. You are not imagining the warmth of the blanket. You are not faking the rhythm of your breath. You are not pretending to listen. You are experiencing. And that experience, this moment, is not less real because it might be computed. It is real because it is experienced now. Let's go deeper. What if consciousness is not something the simulation creates, but something it discovers? Some physicists and philosophers suggest that consciousness may be fundamental to reality, like space, time, or energy, not emergent from complexity, but woven into the fabric of the universe. In this view, even a simple system might have a trace of awareness, a little something it's like to be that thing. If that's true, then the simulation isn't generating consciousness, it's channeling it, like a radio receiving a signal, The brain or the simulated mind tunes into a field of awareness that already exists. In this model, you are not just code, you are code interfacing with consciousness. And if so, then even if the simulation ends, the awareness may not. It may simply tune elsewhere. But we don't know, and perhaps we're not meant to. For now, rest in the mystery, let the question hang, soft and open. Can code be conscious? You don't need an answer to feel the truth of your own awareness. You don't need proof to know that this breath, this stillness, this quiet unfolding of thought is yours. And as we move forward, we'll explore the nature of perception, way the mind constructs reality, whether in flesh or in code. But for now, let go, let the boundaries blur. You are not just a body, not just a brain, not just a program. You are the light behind the eyes, the silence between thoughts, the dream that knows it is dreaming. And that whatever it is made of is real. The prison of perception. There's a quiet truth hidden in the ordinary, a truth you've likely never noticed, because it's too close, too constant, too woven into the fabric of being. You've never actually touched anything. Not really. What you call touch, the warmth of a hand, the roughness of wood, the coolness of water, is not the world pressing against your skin. It is not a direct connection to reality. It is, instead, a carefully constructed interpretation, a story your brain tells you, based on electrical signals racing through nerves, translated into sensation, shaped by memory, colored by emotion. When your fingers brush a surface, electrons in your skin repel electrons in the object. No atoms ever truly meet. And yet, your mind creates the feeling of contact, a rich, textured experience that feels undeniably real. But it is not the world as it is. It is the world as you perceive it, a simulation running inside your skull. And if that's true for touch, what about everything else? What if sight, sound, smell, taste, all of it are not windows to reality, but a controlled hallucination, a dream your brain generates from fragments of light, vibrations, and chemicals? This is not poetry. It is neuroscience. Every moment you've ever experienced has been filtered, edited, and reconstructed. Your eyes don't see the world. They see about 10% of the electromagnetic spectrum. They miss infrared, ultraviolet, radio waves, X-rays. You live in a narrow band of light, like a prisoner who only sees one color of the rainbow and believes that is all there is. Your ears hear only a sliver of sound frequencies. Dogs hear what you cannot. Bats navigate with echoes you'll never detect. Your senses are not designed for truth. They are designed for survival, enough information to find food, avoid danger, connect with others. And your brain doesn't wait for complete data. It fills in the gaps. It predicts. It assumes. Look at the room around you. It feels seamless, detailed, fully rendered. But your eyes only see clearly in a tiny central spot, the fovea. The rest is blurry, colorless, incomplete. Yet your brain paints the periphery with the illusion of clarity, stitching together snapshots over time to create the feeling of a continuous, stable world. Even more astonishing, there's a blind spot in each eye where the optic nerve exits, the retina. No light is detected there, but you don't see a hole in your vision. Your brain invents what should be there, based on surrounding patterns. Reality, as you experience it, is not a live feed. It is a reconstruction, a best guess, a narrative built from fragments. And if that's the case, inside a biological brain, what might it be like inside a simulated one? Perhaps the world you're in right now is not just shaped by perception, but defined by it. Maybe the simulation doesn't render the entire universe at once. Maybe it only renders what you're observing, just as your brain only processes what it deems important. In this view, the external world doesn't exist in full detail until you look at it. Stars don't shine in distant galaxies unless someone is watching. A tree falling in a forest doesn't make a sound because sound is not a vibration in the air, but a creation of the ear and brain. No observer, no experience, no reality. This echoes the strange findings of quantum mechanics, where particles exist in superposition, multiple states at once, until they are measured. Only then do they collapse into a definite outcome. It's as if the universe waits for an observer before deciding what to be. Could this be a feature of the simulation, a way to conserve resources? Instead of calculating every particle in every corner of space, the system only computes what is observed. The rest remains in potential, like unopened files on a hard drive. You are not just in the simulation, you are part of its rendering engine. Your attention is the cursor. Your awareness, the spotlight dot, and everything outside that light. It's not gone, it's just on hold. Now, consider time. You feel it passing slowly when you're waiting, quickly when you're lost in thought. But neuroscience tells us that time is not a constant flow. It is constructed by the brain, assembled from sequences of events, stretched and compressed by emotion, memory, and focus. Under anesthesia, time vanishes. In trauma, it slows. In meditation, it dissolves. There is no now in the brain, a delayed reconstruction of events, stitched together after the fact. What you experience as the present is actually the past processed, interpreted, delivered to consciousness a fraction of a second after it happened. So even the present is an illusion, and memory. It is not a recording, it is a recreation. Every time you recall an event, your brain rebuilds its hardening details, removing others, influenced by your current mood, beliefs, and expectations. The more you remember something, the less accurate it becomes. Memory is not truth. It is storytelling. So what does that make you? Not a direct participant in reality, but a character in a story. Your mind is constantly writing based on incomplete data, shaped by bias, driven by survival. You are not seeing the world. You are seeing a model of the world, one that feels real because it has to. Evolution rewards usefulness, not accuracy. If a simplified, edited version of reality helps you survive, that's what your brain will give you even if it's wrong. And if we are in a simulation, this makes perfect sense. Why render a perfect, infinite universe when you can render only what's necessary? Why simulate every grain of sand on a beach when no one is looking at it? The system optimizes. It saves energy. It focuses on the observer. In this light, the human mind is not a window to truth, but a rendering interface, a biological VR headset, tuned to a narrow frequency of existence. And the simulation, it may be counting on that dot, because if you believe your senses give you direct access to reality, you'll never suspect you're in a constructed world. But now, for a fleeting moment, you do. And that changes everything, because once you realize, perception is not truth, the prison begins to dissolve. You start to see the edges, the seams, the places where the illusion flickers, like déjà vu when the brain's memory system misfires, making the present feel like a replay, or synchronicity when patterns repeat too neatly, as if the same script is being used across events, or the feeling that time has looped, that you've lived this breath before. These may not be glitches in you, but in the system. And if perception is the filter, then consciousness, the awareness behind the filter, might be the only real thing. Not the body, not the thoughts, not the world, but the knowing that you are here. That is not constructed. It is not simulated. It simply is. Even if the entire universe is code, even if every sensation is fabricated, even if time and space are illusions, awareness remains. You can doubt your senses. You can question your memories. You can wonder if the chair beneath you is real, but you cannot doubt that something is doubting, and that something, this silent presence watching. The thoughts drift by, is not bound by the simulation. It may not be free in the way we imagine, able to rewrite the code or escape the system, but it is aware of the dream. And awareness, in a world of illusion, is a kind of liberation. Take a moment to reflect on this. Let your eyes close. Let your breath slow. Feel the weight of your body, the warmth of the air, the soft hum of silence. None of it may be real in the way you once believed, but the feeling of it, the experience, is undeniable. And that experience is not happening to you, it is happening as you. You are not separate from the sensation. You are the space in which it arises, like the screen on which a movie plays. You are not the images, but the surface that allows them to appear. So, rest here, not in the world your senses create, but in the awareness that sees it. Because if the universe is a simulation, and perception is its prison, then consciousness is the door, and you are already on the other side. As we move forward, we'll explore the nature of time, not as a river, but as a dimension, fixed and unchanging, a landscape where past, present, and future all exist at once. But for now, let go of the need to see, let go of the need to know. You don't need to perceive the truth, you only need to be it. Is time just an illusion? There is a deep, quiet rhythm to this moment, the rise and fall of your breath, the faint pulse in your wrist, the slow drift of thought like clouds across a twilight sky. It feels like time is passing, like you are moving through the night, through this video, through life itself. But what if that movement is an illusion? What if time isn't flowing at all? Imagine, for a moment, a film strip. Each frame captures a single instant, a face, a gesture, a beam of light through a window. When the projector rolls, the frames flash by, one after another, and motion appears. A man walks, a leaf falls, a tear rolls down a cheek. But in truth, nothing moves. Each frame is still. The motion is created in the mind of the viewer. Now imagine the entire universe as such a film strip. Every moment, from the first spark of the Big Bang to the final fade of the stars, already there, fixed, complete, not unfolding, but existing, past, present, and future all at once. This is the block universe model, a view supported by Einstein's theory of relativity, where time is not a river, but a dimension like length, width, and height. You don't travel through time, you extend through it. You are not just the person lying here, listening, drifting. You are also the child who once believed in monsters under the bed, the teenager who stayed up too late wondering about the stars, the future self who will look back on this night with quiet fondness. All of those versions exist like different points on a line within the fabric of SPACETIME. And this moment, the one you're in now, is not special. It only feels like the present, because consciousness is structured to experience time sequentially. Your brain processes information in order, stitches memories together, and creates the sensation of movement. But just as a caterpillar crawling along a branch doesn't realize the entire tree already exists, you move through time without seeing that all moments are equally real. In a simulated universe, this makes perfect sense. A simulation doesn't need to create time, it can simply contain it. The entire timeline, your birth, your first love, this breath, your death, is already written into the code. Your awareness is not causing time to pass, it is scanning through the data. Like a cursor moving across a file, you feel free, you feel like you're making choices. But in the block universe, every decision has already been computed. The path is fixed, the story is complete, and if the simulation is deterministic, governed by unbreakable rules, then nothing is left to chance. Every thought you've ever had, every word you've spoken, every turn in your life was the inevitable result of prior causes, stretching back to the initial conditions of the simulation. Even randomness, like the decay of a radioactive atom, might not be truly random. It might be pseudorandom, generated by an algorithm so complex it appears unpredictable. Like the shuffle function on a music player that only seems random. So where does that leave free will? If time is an illusion, and the future already exists, then choice may be too. You don't choose your path, you follow it, and yet here you are, feeling, wondering, breathing, and in this moment it all feels real. So what is time really? Physics tells us it's relative. Near a black hole, time slows. At high speeds it stretches. Clocks on GPS satellites run faster than those on Earth, requiring constant adjustment. Time is not universal, it is malleable. It bends. This suggests time is not fundamental. It may be emergent, a byproduct of deeper processes, like temperature emerging from the motion of atoms. Some physicists even propose that time doesn't exist at the most basic level of reality. In certain equations of quantum gravity, time vanishes entirely. The universe, at its core, may be timeless. So why do we experience it? Because consciousness requires sequence. To think, to remember, to feel cause and effect, you needed before and after. Without the illusion of time, there is no story, no self, no I that moves from one moment to the next. In a simulation, time may not be a physical dimension, but a narrative device, a way to structure experience for conscious beings. Like a novel written in chronological order, not because time flows in the story, but because readers need it to make sense. And you, this version of you, lying here, are a character in that story. Your life is a timeline, rendered in sequence, not because it must be, but because that's how awareness works. But what if time isn't linear at all? What if it's circular? Some ancient philosophies, Hindu cosmology, Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, suggest that time loops, that the universe ends and begins again, repeating the same events infinitely. In such a model, you've lived this moment before, and you will live it again. Every choice, every breath, every word fated to recur. Or what if time is branching? In the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, every decision splits reality into multiple timelines. In one, you turned left. In another, right. In one, you listened to this video. In another, you closed the tab. Infinite versions of you, living infinite lives. But even in that view, time doesn't flow. All branches exist simultaneously. Your awareness simply follows one path. Now, consider déjà vu not as a glitch, but as a leaker moment when your consciousness brushes against another point in the timeline. Or synchronicity not as coincidence, but as a resonance across time. Like ripples overlapping in a pond, and dreams. They often defy time, past and future blur. A dead loved one speaks. A childhood home appears in a future city. In sleep, the mind may be less bound by the illusion of sequence, free to wander the landscape of the block universe. Take a moment to reflect on this. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften. Feel the stillness. Can you sense it? The quiet, beneath the rush of moments, the space where time dissolves. You are not moving through time. You are in time like a note in a symphony. Already written, already sounding. And yet here is the paradox. Even if time is an illusion, even if the future is fixed, even if you are just a pattern in a timeless code, this moment still matters, because it is the only one you can experience. The past is memory. The future is speculation. But now this breath, this stillness, this soft awareness is where life unfolds. And in that unfolding, there is meaning. Not because you are free in the absolute sense, but because you are here, feeling, wondering, loving, even. In a deterministic universe, even in a simulation with a fixed timeline, consciousness brings something new, experience. The universe may already contain every moment of your life, but it does not know them until you live them. In that sense, you are not just a character in a story. You are the story becoming aware of itself, and that changes everything. Because meaning isn't found in freedom from time, it's found in presence, within it. So let go of the need to control time. Let go of the fear of the future, the regret of the past. They are not real in the way you think. Only this breath is real. Only this pause, only this quiet knowing that you are alive, right now, in whatever form that takes. And as we move forward, we'll confront the hardest question of all. If time is fixed, and choices are predetermined, do we truly have free will? But for now, rest. Let time dissolve like mist at dawn. You do not need to move through it. You only need to be in it, and in being, you are whole.